Hello, welcome to another episode of A Transplant Tale. I'm your host, Sarah Adedeji, and I'm here with Carmen. Hello, Carmen.
Hi.
Hi, so Carmen, tell us who you are, where you are from, and where you currently live.
So my name's Carmen. I am originally from Kansas City, Missouri, and I live in Phoenix, Arizona right now. So this is my 10th year here, actually. Crazy.
Oh,
Yeah, it's been a long time.
yes. I guess it has been a while, but it does not feel like it's been that long. That's so
Time
cool.
goes so fast. I can't believe
Yeah.
it.
Wow. Well, that's
Yeah.
awesome. So, what led you to move to Arizona?
It's crazy. It's kind of a long story, but
We got time.
um yeah, I'll figure some of it. But so I went to the University of Missouri. I went to Mizzou and I majored in architecture and interior design. Around like the end of my pretty much the end of my senior year, I decided that I didn't want to go into interior design after college. And I'd known that I had always worked with children, like in my past. Those were always jobs that I had: tutoring, summer camps, summer school, things like that. So I started looking into teaching programs, and I looked at Teach for America originally. But it was kind of late in the process, so I didn't get placed anywhere through there. And then I found this program, Teaching Fellows, and I am pretty sure when I filled out the application that they have a section where they ask you like your top cities where you want to be placed. And I'm pretty sure Arizona was like nowhere on that because I was trying to move. It was my plans was to move to Chicago after college. Um, and I knew I didn't necessarily want to go back to Kansas City because I had been in Kansas City my whole life, love Kansas City, but I wanted to start my post college life, in a new city. And that seemed like a good transitional time to do it. Um, but when I got accepted to the Teaching Fellows program, I got placed in Arizona. And I remember the email was like, there's four choices. It was like Yuma, Tucson, the reservation, and then Phoenix. And I had been to Tucson when I was in middle school. And I was like, I'm pretty sure Phoenix is a lot like Tucson, just like a bigger city. So I picked Phoenix and I got placed out here. And that was in like April of my senior year.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it all happened really fast. So I graduated, and then May, like around Memorial Day weekend, I flew out here and started the like summer program that we were starting. So it was right away. So that's how I ended up here after that. Yeah.
That's really good. So, with that process, do they help you find housing or different things like that? Or what were your like next steps after finding out that you got placed in?
Yeah. So with that program, the summer was pretty much, it was an accelerated teaching program. So during the summer, I did kind of my student teaching. I taught summer school, and summer school out here is half a day, 4 days a week. And then the second half of the days, we had like classes that we did. And in the summer, they had like a career fair pretty much where we got to meet with a lot of principals from different schools and school districts out here. And that's how I ended up like getting my first job out here and my first teaching job. And then I kind of just looked for apartments in the area. I looked for furnished apartments since I was just moving. I wanted to not have to worry about that my first year. So I'm sure I kind of got that just by either asking around or a little bit of my own research. Yeah.
So, fast forward, how long was the teaching program?
It was, I believe, 4 weeks. So basically most of like June, I want to say. Yeah. So
So then they placed you in a school to be able to start like in the fall.
yeah. And out here school starts like crazy early. So we teachers go back to school like the last week in July.
Oh,
And
wow.
then we start school like the first week in August, pretty much. So
Wow. That is early.
yeah.
So when did you get out if you start that early? Like the last week of May or? How does that work?
Yeah, we get out before Memorial Day. So our
Oh,
last day this year was May 20th, I want to say,
oh,
20 something. Yeah.
okay. So that's not too bad.
Yeah.
So then once you like got that job, you stayed on that job, what made you decide, you know what, I do want to stay in Phoenix because that wasn't your original plan. So what made you want to stay?
Yeah. So I think I know I really enjoyed like the weather here. I know it's crazy to say that right now because it's extremely hot outside. Like it was like 117 yesterday. But
Oh my goodness.
I like my first year here, I remember by the time it got to about October or November, I was like, wow, I haven't had to turn on the heat. Like I brought all these coats and I didn't even touch them maybe the first winter. And I hate snow. So I was like, no snow. It was great. So the weather honestly is a big thing. I think I tell people 80% of the year it's great weather here, usually. I like the change of scenery and I really liked the city. Um, Now, my first year, I did end up leaving the school that I was at because, like, teaching is really hard. And my first year of teaching was really hard. But I don't remember ever being like, I'm gonna leave Phoenix. But I knew I was needing to find a new home with teaching. So I ended up changing schools, but yeah, I like it.
So what was that process like of like coming from Kansas City and the school system and everything there to the Phoenix school system? Like besides the starting different starting times, like
Yeah,
navigating like going from like a student in Kansas City to a teacher in Arizona.
I thought it was very interesting that when I moved here, so like in Kansas City, we have Kansas City's public school district. Like that's the district, unless you go to like Raytown or Independence. In Phoenix, there's like I can name 5 school districts off the top of my head right now that are in the area, and there's definitely more. So there was a lot of school districts and charter schools are a big thing out here. So like my first year I was at a charter school. Um, but that was different to me, just getting adjusted to how many different districts there were.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was big.
Yeah, I would never think about that being a thing. Like, you know,
Yeah,
like
I was like, wow, I didn't know there's so many districts out here to think about. But yeah.
yeah. And so beyond the weather, what were some other things that may have been like a culture shock?
I I very vividly remember maybe the first few months that I was here, like while I was still finding my like church home, and I had connected with some of the girls in my sorority that I'm a part of. And I like went a long time without seeing like black people really. So like I would go to Walmart or I'd go grocery shopping and I'm like, there is not black people in this area. And coming from Kansas City, inner city Kansas City, that was like very different for me. But eventually I saw them. But at first I remember being kind of surprised. Like that was something I noticed a lot of. And obviously Arizona is like right on the border of Mexico. So just a heavier um Mexican and Hispanic population out here, which really bleeds into like the city culture, which I love. But that was a difference as well. But yeah.
That's really cool. So speaking of like the people and like the different environment and things, how did you go about getting connected and like establishing yourself for the past 10 years?
Yeah. So it was honestly a huge blessing. It happened kind of seamlessly for me. And I tell people I was very blessed and I'm very grateful for my transition out here. Because it could have been a lot more lonely. And I was fortunate. I joined Sigma Gamma Rho sorority my senior year of college. And literally, like right before I graduated, I left there. But when I got to Phoenix, there happened to be girl in the same program that I was in, and I was wearing like my SGRO pin one day, and she was like, "I'm an SGRO too," and I
Oh,
connected with her, and that was like right before my program was over, so I hadn't even fully moved out here, but she invited me to like events, and I met the other girls in the chapter, a lot of them around my same age who are just finished college or freshly out. So they were and are like, I'm still friends with them now. We still hang out. I'm actually gonna see some of them later.
oh,
But they were a big part of like my building of community, I would call it out here. Like I that first year I was with those girls like maybe every weekend, I would say. And it was really helpful. So that was one part for sure. Um The other part, my uncle recommended some churches out here because, like, growing up, church was always a big part of my life. And I knew that that was also a way to get connected and to find a community. Being an only child and then like moving out here, I have no family that's out here in Phoenix or even on the West Coast, really. And my biggest thing was like, I need community or else I'm going to end up being really like shut in. And joining a church and my sorority really helped build that for me.
yeah, I love that and definitely resonate with that.
Yeah.
And we talk about that often on here. It's just like getting plugged in. A lot of us end up getting plugged into like a church family. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's great that your uncle like had recommendations because I'm like on Google trying to figure out, you know.
Yes, that was my uncle was like a part of the National Baptist Convention and probably like knows many like connected with a lot of churches. So I remember I messaged him and I was like, "Do you have any recommendations of like churches in the Phoenix area?" And he like gave me a list basically. And I would go visit a church every Sunday. And then eventually I got to the church. It's actually my church home now. I've been at this church for the last 10 years. I went there, and then the next week came, and I was going to move on to my list. And I was like, oh, I think I want to go back to that church. So, and then I just never left. So,
I love that.
yeah.
That's so sweet. So, what are some ways that you have like I don't want to say entertain yourself, but I mean, I guess for like a better term, like what are some ways that you've been able to like stay busy and stay entertained?
Yeah. Well, my first year out here, teaching was a big part. Like I remember teaching took up way more time than I was expecting it to. So that kept me really busy during the week. And on the weekends, like I said earlier, I hung out with my sorority sisters a lot. And we would either do like sorority events at ASU sometimes, since we were the ones that were freshly out of college. Like we're probably the ones that do most of the events on campus. Um, and like going out with them on the weekends. We would go out to different places, different events that were happening. Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
pretty much kept me busy, I think.
Yeah, that's good. So, what are just some like lessons that you feel like you've learned or ways that you've grown over the past 10 years?
It's crazy because I feel like I've always done things based on a feeling. Like that feels right and I'm not worried about it going wrong because it's supposed to work out. And not to say that everything has happened easily, but I've gotten to where I'm at because like that's the path I was supposed to go on. I was supposed to be out here. I was supposed to connect with the sorority sisters that I connected with. I was supposed to connect with the people at the church that I'm at. Like those are lifelong connections and friends now. Like that's my family out here. And even like transitioning from my different schools, my first school, even though it was not a great fit for me, that was a year where I learned a lot about myself as a teacher. And I think without that year, I wouldn't have been prepared to be where I'm at now in education. So I'm grateful for that school. I'm grateful for my second school that I found. Um, and I taught sixth grade math for a long time at that school. And then I decided I wanted to go into art teaching. And so I'm at the school that I'm at now. So I think I've just learned to trust my gut and to trust that, like, God's taking care of me and he's not going to put something in my path that's not for me. Like, if it's for me, it's going to come.
Mhm.
So I've done a lot of trusting in that past few years.
I love that. It's so true.
Yeah.
So, what is some advice that you would give someone who is looking to move to a new place or who just recently found out that they're not going to the place that they thought they were going to go to? Or
Yeah.
yeah.
I would say, and you probably get this a lot, but like that building of a community is really important. Um, because when you move to a new city, it can feel really lonely. Like everything is new, like you're having to figure out new like grocery stores. I remember when I moved out here, I'm like, there's no Price Chopper. I don't know any of these grocery stores. There's no Hy-Vee. So you have to learn like the grocery store, you have to learn the different areas, the highways. But when you have a good sense of community and you have those connections, like those people will help pull you along and support you. Um, and I know that sometimes that can be hard if you don't know where to start, but building a community or figuring out where you can find your community. Like for me, it was church and my sorority. For other people, like out here, hiking is a big thing. So you can find like hiking groups, you can find like groups that work out. There's different yoga groups. We have like First Fridays at the art museums downtown. So there's different ways that I think you can connect. But community, community, community. I think that's really important when you're moving somewhere new.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And so, what are some challenges that you feel like you encountered as you navigated, whether it be the move itself or just as you got established? And then, how do you feel like you overcame this challenge?
Yeah, I my first year, the one of the biggest things I can think of is like managing adult money because like a salary and then like rent and car payments. And in the few months, I was like, how do people do this? Like, I'm not making that much money as a first year teacher,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, but everybody wants money from me every month. So that was a struggle, but thankfully, I'm very blessed. My mother was a big help with me on that. And I think the other thing would be it was hard for me to still feel connected to my friends that were back in Kansas City and in the Midwest and my family. Like, even though I had kind of my own community out here that I was building, I felt pretty separated from like my friends that I had spent the last 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years with. And, it's hard to stay connected with like long distance friendships. Um, so that was a struggle. And I try now to just reach out to my friends. I started traveling a lot more, making sure that I could make like milestones. Um, my mom has made it a tradition. She comes out here for either Thanksgiving or Christmas, and then I go home for either Christmas or Thanksgiving. But that was a lesson to learn, and you figure that out along the way. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Because it's so true. Like when you're far away from home, especially like you said, when you're trying to manage all the money and trying to see everybody, it's hard to balance, but and
Yeah.
travel and do the things. So I'm glad you're able to manage that so you can balance the two. So that's really good. And
Yeah.
then what is something, so I call it the suitcase. Like what is something that you make sure you put in your suitcase, like a song, a quote, a scripture, or whatever the case may be, to just like keep you motivated and keep you focused, grounded.
I I'm not sure if I have like a very specific anything really.
Yeah.
Um I just keep kind of in that mind space of like what's for me will be for me and is for me, and I'm not gonna miss it. It's not gonna miss me. So I think that has kind of kept me moving and just reminding myself that I have like the support, I have the love, I have great friends, and I'm not alone. It's like really easy sometimes to feel like you're very much so alone when you move, especially like on your own. But you're not.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that's definitely true. Like as you're navigating through, it helps you to shift your perspective. So it's not like you missed anything or anything missed you because you know that what's going to be for you, it's always going to be for you. So
Yeah.
that's good. That's really
Yeah.
good. Well, anything else you want to tell the people before we wrap up?
I don't know. I mean, I came to Phoenix 10 years ago, and it's crazy to think that it's been 10 years. But when I look back, like I've done so much in those last 10 years. Like the opportunities that I've had, even like I was telling you before we started my master's program that I'm starting, and I leaving for New York in a couple weeks to stay there for about 6 weeks. And I've just gotten to do so many things. I have a entire like new family here that I've now been able to have my family here connect with like some of my friends and family from back home, and that's it's always beautiful, and it's helped me see, or not helped but shown me that I have like really great people in my life, and that's usually a good feeling when you're like I pick or I attract great people. So that's been just really lovely to see how like the opportunities and the love that I have and the support and the connections that I've made. Like I love being out here, and I think it was a good move. Very different from my original plans. Like I told you, this all happened April of my senior year. And up until that point, I was planning on moving to Chicago. So it happened fast, but it worked out. So
I love that. And I can definitely identify with that because I thought I was moving to New York and I thank the Lord that that did not work out.
yeah,
Because it's
really.
definitely more of my speed right now.
Yeah. Yeah. New York is a fast pace and expensive.
Yes,
So
yes. So I have a medium pace and less expensive.
yeah.
So no, I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so so much for being on the
Yeah.
show today. So glad to have you and
Thank
appreciate
you. Thank you
you.
so much for thinking of me. I was like, oh, I appreciate it.
Yeah, you know, it's good to have you. And thank you all so much for watching or listening to another episode of Transplant. So see ya. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Transplant Tale. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. See ya!